Welcome back, everybody. NRA 2017 attendees. My name is John Sheehan. I'm the head of law enforcement sales for Viridian Weapon Tech, and we're joined today again by Rob Pincus, just a trainer extraordinaire, and we're going to cover a few topics today, everything from self-defense to anything else that you want to talk about. You want to step up to the microphone, ask Rob some questions, please feel free to do that. Rob, how you doing today?
Great. Good to be here, John. Viridian Weapon Technologies, amazing products you guys have. Proud to have you as a 2017 Personal Defense Network Tour sponsor. We had a lot of fun here on the stage yesterday, and I'm looking forward to getting some questions. The place is packed. This is great.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. We've had a lot of crowds here this morning checking out our stuff, and let's get right into it. Yesterday we talked a lot about I.C.E. and really covered a lot of that. Now let's talk about combat-focused shooting. Yeah,
combat-focused shooting is an intuitive shooting program designed to help people be more efficient in that defensive gun use, that unexpected, chaotic event to which the appropriate response is shooting. We tell people when they show up to the class, we're talking about developing applied shooting skills. It's not a class about de-escalation, it's not a class about tactics, it's not a class about using your knife or your taser. All those things are incredibly important, of course, but that's not what that is. The CFS program is the skill development training methodology to help people kind of work well with what their body does naturally. That's how we define intuitive, to be as efficient as they can be, which we define as achieving your goal with as little time, effort, or energy as possible. We need our shooting skills to be robust. We need to be able to apply them without the perfect stance, apply them in a chaotic situation, and most importantly, apply the skills while we are processing other information. We shouldn't be thinking about our grip or our trigger press when we're shooting any more than we think about how much we're pressing the gas pedal while we're driving.
Gotcha.
That just happens in the background.
Okay, and if we're going to take one of your classes, what kind of gear would we bring for a CFS seminar or class?
If somebody has a concealed carry permit, or if they're an armed professional that wears a gun and gets paid for it and has a professional job where they need a firearm, we tell them to bring their concealed carry gear, bring their concealed carry firearm, bring their duty belt, bring that duty firearm. Now, of course, for law enforcement, they may be paying for it on their own. The agency isn't sending them, or the military isn't sending somebody in, and they want to bring their concealed carry gear because they know they're off duty. You know how it is.
Sure.
You're on duty, you're wearing your uniform, but there's some other gun that you wear in some other holster, maybe even in some other place. Got to get practice that way too. So we encourage people to bring the gear that they're actually going to use. And here's the deal. People will say, well, is this okay? Well, if you tell me if that's what you're carrying, that's what your holster is, as long as I don't think it's unsafe. Right? So if somebody tells me, well, I'm carrying a Glock 26 in my pocket without a holster chambered, I'm going to say no.
Which we all know people do.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I've had that's an example of things I've had. I say, no, that's not okay. On the other hand, I know a lot of women will say, well, I carry in a purse. And I say, okay, well, listen, do you have a separate area for the gun, or is it just thrown in your purse? Separate area. All right. Do you have a holster in that area? Is the trigger guard covered, and is the gun in a consistent orientation when you reach into that pocket? Yeah. Okay, good. Do you own a holster for the gun that doesn't go in the purse? Yes, I do, but I don't ever use it. Okay, I'll tell you what. Do this. Bring the purse, bring the gun, bring the holster also, because I want you to experience what I believe is the proper way to get that gun out of the purse and shoot it rapidly, as efficiently as you can. I want you to be able to compare it to a holster that might fit the way you dress and your body style, and you may see the significant advantage of carrying that gun on your body versus carrying that gun in your purse, the off-body carry, and experience that. But at the end of the day, if you're going to carry in a purse, my job is to teach you how to get that gun out of that purse as efficiently as you can without being a danger to yourself or others, and use it. And if you come to the conclusion that that's not the best gear setup for you, we probably agree. And then you have to decide about that compromise of how you carry and what you wear and how you dress. But men go through the same thing, just in maybe some different ways. They may have a holster that, a pocket holster with a .380. Well, I don't think that's the best gun, but if that's what you're carrying, then that's what you should be training with. Now, what we find is most people will show up with, a mid-size gun or a full-size gun and lots of magazines and, external holster and all that stuff, and that's great for the skill development of the shooting part. But when it comes to presentation from the holster, let's say somebody's carrying normally at the 4 o'clock, right? I'm dressed in a suit today. I'm not carrying appendix. I'm carrying at the 4 o'clock. I've got an inside the waistband. It's a small gun with a short barrel. Inside the waistband, the holster edge is just below the top of my pants. It's much harder to get this gun reholstered than it would be if I had an outside the waistband holster at 4 o'clock. But is reholstering an incredibly important skill for personal defense? Absolutely not. So if somebody wants to just get the training value and they don't want to mess around with digging around inside their waistband and all that other stuff, how about you just bring an outside the waistband holster, that doesn't have any extra straps or levers or retention devices that your primary holster doesn't have. You know, you want one-to-one there. So you can still get your grip on the gun in the same place on your body, pull it out the same way, turn it towards the bad guy the same way, drive it out and shoot, come back in and assess, and it's going to be easier for you to reholster and safer on the line with a bunch of people, especially if you're just learning it, and you're still getting 98% of the training value with that outside the waistband holster versus the inside. So that's about the only recommendation we make is how about bringing an outside the waistband holster? And guess what? By the afternoon or by day 2, certainly by our advanced pistol handling class, the students are ready to go inside the waistband and not have a safety issue. But when someone's just learning, quite honestly, we do first half of the day is all from the ready position, right? That holster is just a bucket. They're carrying the gun back and forth from the reloading area, you know? So it's the gear, the gun, the holster, I just want it to be the same type. If somebody carries a Glock 26, but they want to shoot a Glock 17, we know that the 17 is going to shoot faster for them. They're going to get more grip. There's more weight. They're going to have faster follow-up shots, all that. But they're still getting 90% of the value they would out of training with a 26. And as long as, you know, they are training with that 26 too, they may learn more in our class because the gun's a little bit easier to control and they can pay more attention to the lectures and the concepts and the drills. And then they can also go home and get practice with that smaller gun. So I'm about consistency of concept, consistency of principle, consistency of gun type, consistency of where you wear the gun, what kind of holster you're using. But it doesn't have to be one-to-one to be valuable.
Now, when you see somebody that comes in and you maybe suggest that better way of carrying the holster to reduce that lag time, make it more efficient as far as being on the draw and getting on target, do you find more times than not that they take you up on your suggestion and change the way they carry
absolutely.
after this class?
You got to remember, like, it's not like it was when we were in the public sector, right?
Yeah.
And when I teach in the public sector, I reasons I'll ask, you know, who's an armed professional in the class, right? And I don't do the introduce yourself and take a lot of time, but I do want to know a couple things. So one of the things I ask is who's an armed professional? If you're an armed professional, what that means to me is you may be given a gun and a holster that regardless of whether it fits your hand well, regardless of whether you like it or not, it's the gun you have to use, right? I get a guy that comes from the Navy side, he's got a SIG whether he likes it or not. Now they're getting ready to go to Glocks, but for a while that's what it was. Get a guy from the Army side, he's going to have a Beretta. Get a guy from this agency, he's going to have something issued. So when you were with Las Vegas, was there a range of guns?
Except when I was in SWAT, it had to be a 17C for a handgun.
So for example, somebody comes in with a 17C. Now I'm not a big fan, especially for close quarters, the ported guns. Doesn't matter.
Right.
That's what you have to carry.
Right.
So what I think or what I'm going to explain to you or the reasons I'm going to give you don't matter anymore. Now I do have to have you work with that gun.
Right.
On the other hand, the average person comes to a class, they paid me, right? They took their time. They're coming, you know, on their own dime, being away from their family, away from their work. And they get to make choices in life. And if they've made a choice that probably isn't the optimum one for them, part of my job isn't just to sort of humor their bad purchasing decision, but my job is to make them as prepared as possible. And you know how it is. Some people can benefit greatly from a gun that fits their hand better than the one they bought, and it doesn't matter why they bought it. You know, you can go sell it, and you might lose a little money on it, but you can get a better gun that fits your hand better. And now you can apply these concepts and the skills and do the drills in a much more efficient way. And most people are receptive to that because it's the private sector. They came here, you know, respecting my advice at some level because they put out the time, they're putting out the energy to show up. You know, if they already have made that leap, then if I say, hey, listen, here's why your gun, and the thing, it can't be the gun that I use. It can't be, look, I use this gun, so you should use it.
Right.
It can't be, this is the gun whose logo is on my truck. It can't be, I did a TV commercial for somebody 10 years ago, so that's the gun you should use. You know, they have to trust that here's why. And I give them the physics or the anatomy or the physiology, or I show them the examples of where their thumb knuckle is behind the beaver tail versus next to the gun, and how the gun fits their hand is so important that people usually do walk away saying, I guess I need a new gun.
Nice.
You know, and I have a lot of different guns in the truck. You know, Springfield Armory is the sponsor for the tour this year, but I have a lot more than just Springfields in there, right? Somebody's hand might fit a Glock better. Somebody's hand might fit a Smith & Wesson better, and they know that, right? You can go down the booth and ask them. They know I'm not out there saying everybody needs a Springfield, right? Because that would be disingenuous, and it would undermine the value of being associated with me if I were just going to do that, right?
No.
Now, everybody needs a Viridian green light and laser.
Well,
we
sure.
know that. Right?
Yeah.
So, come on, right?
That's why we're here. That's why we're here.
Maybe not. You know, maybe it's not the perfect way to spend your first $300, your first $200, right? If you just bought the gun and you haven't shot your first few boxes of ammo, you haven't taken your class yet. How about we do that first, and then as you're ready to take advantage of the things the laser can do for you in unorthodox situations, in less likely situations, in more extreme situations, that's when that laser comes in, right? That's when, and that light, I think your primary light should be a handheld light, especially in personal defense, right? So you've got a light on your gun as a secondary light or a backup light or some situation where this won't work or you need two hands on the gun and you need that high level of precision. Great. Have the light on the gun, but I don't think you should use your light, your gun as a flashlight.
No,
right?
no. Well, they don't even like you doing that in law enforcement either.
No,
I mean,
exactly.
it's pretty much against policy to do that. You can't use just for a tool to use it like that. You have to have an individual
and that's
flashlight.
an advanced skill to know how to bounce that light and how to do what you're supposed to do with that gun. That takes a higher level of training. So day one on the range, you're not going to show up at one of the tour classes, even though Viridian's a sponsor of the tour. I'm not going to say, well, you don't have a laser on your gun. You really should get a laser on your gun. Now, by the time we get to our advanced pistol handling class, day 3, you'll see where that laser comes in. And we give people that demo. That's part of the tour class experience. Is we show them about compressed shooting positions. We show them about what if your arm was injured and you couldn't get your gun up to your line of sight and you could still use that laser. What if it's a lighting conditions where you can't get the contrast to get a sight alignment and sight picture, but you can maybe drop that gun 2 degrees out of your line of sight and boom, there's that green laser dot. Now you know where that bullet's going. Oh. So there are definitely applications for gear. And there's reasons to have all the gear from all of our tour sponsors, but it's not a situation where you come to a class and if you don't have what's on the side of my truck, you're gonna feel like you shouldn't be there.
Well, I wouldn't even feel right selling anybody any of our products that wasn't proficient in what they were carrying anyway already.
Exactly.
Because it will just make you that much better, but I'm not going to be able to take you, a person that's unfamiliar with your gun, and tell you that if you slap a laser on your weapon, all of a sudden you're going to be ready to shoot competition shooting, and that you're going to be just a fantastic tactical guru. You're not.
Or that you'd be instantly safe, right? And,
and
the gun is not a magic talisman. The aftermarket trigger isn't a magic talisman. The laser, the light, whatever. It's just the Cerakote color, like none of that makes it. What your skill is what makes you able to defend yourself with a gun.
Basic fundamentals of shooting have to be there before you start thinking about tacking tools on the end of your weapon. Absolutely should be there because it's just going to make you that much better when you do go with something from Viridian. Talking about CFS now. If we're enrolled in one of your classes, how many rounds of ammo would we need to take into your class?
Two-day class, we recommend 1,000 rounds.
Okay, that's a lot of shooting.
Yeah, it is. What happens is people will come out to the class and we'll probably shoot 250, 300 rounds in the first day, maybe close to 400 if it's maybe a higher average skill set in the class. We may go to 4 to 6 shots with your bursts of fire as a standard as opposed to 3 to 5 shots. Then we'll get some more rounds downrange. Day 2, we'll definitely hit 500. Sometimes we'll go a little over that. So people will leave with ammo. Every once in a while I'll get a guy, well, you said bring 1,000 rounds and we only shot 837. It's like, well, good. You got 163 rounds to go home and practice with.
Yeah, exactly.
You're going home with your practice ammo because if you're not practice what you do in that class, you're going to lose that skill set. You can't, even if we did one thing, if we just did one physical skill for 2 days and that's all we did, you got 999 reps and one fake one on that last bullet of a slide lock reload, for example, you'd get a really good at slide lock reloads at that class, but if you never practiced them, 6 months later, you'd be almost not back to zero, but somewhere close.
Yeah, that's so counterproductive because here you spent 2 days with somebody just trying to create that muscle memory and just trying to create that elevated shooting skill, and now if they're not using it, well, what good was it for you to even take the class? So that's probably the biggest message that you try to get to them at the end of that last day is, look, we gave you the basic skills, but now you need to continue to train and practice and build upon that.
In fact, I'll tell everybody in the morning, there's 2 areas that I'm worried about. Physical comfort. Can you do what it is I'm asking you to do? And if your arm doesn't go straight, but I suggest your arm straight, I'm not going to send you home. I'll teach you how to shoot with your body, with your gun. Like I said, the guy that gets issued the Beretta 92 or the M9, and his hands aren't big enough to run that gun the way I think he should, strong hand on that decocker safety. Right. If he's got normal size or shorter thumbs, that's hard to do on that gun. So you're going to use your weak hand. We're going to compromise that technique so that it will work for you and your body because the Army said you have to use that gun. Now, on the other hand, if you can reach that with your strong hand thumb, I want you to do it that way because this hand may not always be on the gun. And I want you to decock and be able to go back to the double action first shot when you come out of that holster or when you're going to reholster. So we will adapt the physical technique to the person and to the gear sometimes. But the intellectual side means that you're not doing that physical technique just because Rob said so. Right? I saw Rob, you're working with Viridian. I love Viridian, so I'm going to listen to everything Rob says. Well, we appreciate the thought, but that's not the reason. The reason is it's what Rob says makes sense to you because of physics, because of engineering of the guns and how the guns are engineered, and because of the empirical evidence about how fights happen, because of physiology, because of neurology, because of the way human vision work.
Biomechanics,
all that stuff. If you understand the whys, you can own that forever.
Sure.
You can't own the physical skill in 1 or 2 days of practice. You gotta practice things over time. But you can own the ideas. You can own the concepts, and that will hopefully inform your practice and your gear selection and everything else you do for the rest of your life potentially after that class. So we'll do a lot of lecture. We do a lot of question and answer. We do a lot of, do you really understand why? One of the things that gets me is I'll get a guy who says, well, we'll just agree to disagree. Well, the only thing I'm going to agree to disagree about is your lack of conviction.
Right.
Because this is life and death stuff. Like, if you think something different is better, let's talk about it. Because you might be right. I've had many students explain things to me that I just didn't know. I've had students expose me to techniques over the years that I'd never seen before. I've had students show up with pieces of gear that I hadn't experienced with, and I learn things in the class, and I say, you know what, you're right. You should do it your way. Now, the rest of the 15 people here, you keep doing what I said with your gun, but this guy's arm works in a certain way, or this guy's missing a digit, or this guy's got a piece of gear that none of you have that he should be doing it differently.
Right.
And so it's not dogmatic, but it's certainly passionate. I want to have that conversation with students in a CFS class. I want to have that exchange. I want everybody to be able to answer why. So we don't have to agree, but we have to understand. And there's a big difference between faith and proof. And I can't just say, oh, well, that guy's been on 3 combat tours, so whatever he's saying is right. I need to be able to say, why is it right? Explain it to me. Why is A better than B? Because usually A or B is better for one or two people, right? Whichever it is. And they have to understand why.
So now so let's say we've already been through combat-focused shooting, and we've upped our skills. Our skill set is elevated. Now we're ready to put a Viridian product on our weapon. When you're training with our systems, what do you actually do?
So I've got the reactor on a XDS, and I've got the C5L on some of the full-size guns, the home defense guns, honestly, the 5-inch XDS tactical, or sorry, XD Mod 2 tactical, and some of the Glocks and the M&Ps that are wearing that. And then I have the C5s and or the X5s on the rifles. And the first thing I expose people to are those unorthodox shooting positions, the compressed shooting positions when you're out of contact. So, if you're in contact with somebody, you're not aiming per se, you're pointing the gun based on that body contact. But if someone's charging at you, right? So if you've got someone who's the other side of this stage, and they are very quickly going to be within 2 arms reach, we don't want to extend our gun out and then have them knock the gun offline or grab it or have any of that. So we're going to shoot from back here. But now if I'm not touching that person, I don't have that knowledge of where their body is that I do from that tactile contact shooting situation. It's just awesome and confidence inspiring, and it allows you to be much more quick on the trigger and follow-up shots when you see that green laser show up. Right? When that laser dot shows up on that target, when it's 6 feet away, when it's 5 feet away, as it comes in, you know what you're doing is what you're doing, and you're not 5 degrees off shooting at that person, and you're not just backpedaling and hip shooting, but you know that laser's there, and you can dig that gun in against your body and make sure that magazine well's there. You're going to get reliable slide, and you're going to get reliable recoil management, and that laser tells you where the bullet's going. That's an awesome, awesome feeling that you can't get without that laser aiming indicator. The other thing we'll do is we'll talk about those unorthodox positions for when you're injured. So in other words, my arms hurt, my body's hurt, I'm laying down on the ground, I'm in another kind of weird compressed position inside of a car. Maybe I had some road rage incident, some guy knocks my car off the road, I'm disheveled, turned over, can't get up, seatbelt stuck, but I can get to my gun and I can get to here, and he's coming at me, and I can see that laser, but I can't get into an extended shooting position. Once again, I get an indicator for where that bullet's going to go. We tell people how to set the laser up, what distance to zero the laser, what distance to set the laser in. That's really important. We sight in lasers differently than we sight in red dots, for example, on the ARs. The red dots, we're going to zero out at a much further distance, and we're going to have one point of aim around that top band, the top of the ear, the eye, and we know that bullet's going to fall in there somewhere. Even at bedroom distance, it's going to be maybe 3 inches low, right? But it's still going to go where we want it. With a laser, we're gonna zero that laser closer in, because we want that bullet going exactly where the laser is gonna be at that bedroom distance, because that's where you're most likely to use it. We're not using a laser at 100 yards for personal defense, right? So it's a different kind of sighting system. So we teach people how to use it differently, even on the rifles, even the SWAT guys, the military guys. The laser gets zeroed a little differently, so we talk about that. We talk a lot about that idea of contrast. On the range, it's very hard to create a situation where you can't use your sights. Right? You got to really either tape the sights up or do some crazy things with lights. So it gets pretty extreme. But conceptually, we can understand that there could be a time when we drive that, and I don't care if it's night sights, tritium, whatever it is, the fiber optics, the bright luminescent paint, you could find a time when you can't get your sight alignment in your sight picture. And if a guy's 20 feet away holding a knife to a family member and you can't get that sight alignment sight picture on his head, you just ran out of it. You lost an option of using that firearm. But if I can drop that gun just a little bit out of my line of sight and I see that green laser dot, I know where that bullet's going. Right. So those are the primary areas that we hit. If somebody has a laser, what we look out for is that they are having as a standard shooting position with that gun kind of at their chin, looking over the gun, looking for the laser. We want to make sure they're not using that laser as a primary aiming device. Right. Primary aiming is good kinesthetic alignment. Secondary is using that sight, get that sight alignment sight picture, and the laser is a tertiary aiming device for specific situations.
And that's really part of sticking with those shooting principles.
Absolutely.
And applying the laser to those basic shooting principles that we want people to have.
Yeah.
One thing you touched on, which is so important too, is, and I'll kind of get back into it, but you're talking about using, an ACOG or a Trijicon sight or something on a rifle, which is an offensive weapon, but we're talking about handgun lasers, and handguns are defensive weapons. Yep. And that's why we sight those in for room-sized distances rather than farther out. It's for a close quarter battle.
Yeah, it really is. And we know a lot of people have those long guns staged in their bedroom, in their barricade area. We tell people, you're not going to put on your AR and run around your house to clear your house. That's not what we're teaching. Right. But if you've got your family behind you and the barricade door's locked and you've got the police on the way and you've got an AR in your hands, again, you want that laser, and it's counterintuitive to people, whether it's the handgun or the rifle, to sight in a laser at 15 feet. It's like, why am I even using it? Well, you're doing it because you may not be able to get that position. You may not be able to get that clarity. The red dot or whatever you have may not be operating for you. Here's another way to get that shot into the target and not into the wall, and who knows where it goes from there.
Well, the other thing, too, is that I don't like about a long gun for a home defense solution is unless you're very proficient in using a sling, once you actually employ that, and you use it. Now you're married to it until somebody else gets there. You can't go down and restrain somebody, or you can't go and rescue your family member because now you're holding this rifle. And unless you are very proficient in how you're going to sling it, or very figuring that you're going to be able to be safe to sling it, you're stuck with it. So why not have a handgun, have a holster, have whatever you need that you'll be able to do what you need to do.
And that holster is so important. One of the big things we stress, right? One of the big things we stress is the idea that the best way, if I have to go from my bedroom to the other side of the house and make sure the kids are all right, the best way for me to do that, I believe that probably the best way for you to do that too, and anybody coming through these classes, is with a gun in a holster, with your hand on the gun in the holster in what we call the staged position, flashlight in your hand, and go. And hopefully you're training so that if you bump into somebody in your house, you see somebody in your house that you need to shoot, you can very quickly get that gun out and use it. But the tragedies that happen every year with people at low levels of training running around like Jack Bauer in their house, at some partially extended ready position, fingers going towards the trigger, they're nervous, they're scared, the dog's barking, the alarm's going off, the window was broken, and the kid runs down in front of them, and then the shot goes off. We can avoid those tragedies with some confidence in your training ability. That 3/4 of a second, half a second maybe that you're giving up is worth the confirmation of that's what you need to do. And that hesitation here, there isn't time. That shot's going off. We see it every year. Law enforcement pointing guns at people saying, hey, stop, stop, stop. And then their partner shoots and they shoot. Or some other guy jumps out of somewhere and that finger was on the trigger and they have that grasp reflex and it's a tragedy. And we see it 2 or 3 or 4 times a year around the country. We just had one happen in Colorado like that recently. Officer fired a less lethal, a beanbag at somebody. Another officer had the gun pointed, covering him in case he tried to make some kind of a violent move that was not just uncooperative but needed to be shot. And that less lethal went off and this guy fired around.
Yeah, sympathetic discharge.
It's not, and you're in your house and you have a heightened state of emergency. You have this distraction from the fundamentals because you're worried about your kids and you're worried about everything that's going on. That gun in the holster is not far away from being used if you need it, but it's so much further from a tragedy that we know happens all too often.
And the other thing too is if someone's lurking around the house and you've got the training, you've got the gun, you got the holster, you got the laser, all that stuff, what's the need to go bum rushing through your own house at hostage rescue speed? You don't need to do it. You need to be a little more slow and methodical. And if you slow down, chances are it will also slow down that nervous factor that you're going to have, that heightened sense of fear or whatever, because you're moving, assessing, moving, and then I assess, and then I move, and then I assess, and I'm trying to track where I think this person is lurking in my house.
And remember, your goal is to get to the family. If your family is with you, you don't go search your house for the bad guy. You're not trying to you're not trying to clear your house. That seems one of the best teams in the world miss things in shoot houses, in training environments. Go past open doors, or miss a danger area, or go by a role player, get jumped on. You know, if they can do it, if I can do it, I'm sure if I put you in a shoot house, you know, we would probably take about 100 runs, but you might make one little mistake somewhere.
Sure.
You don't want to be the one making that mistake in the real world. You just protect your family.
We
used
to train cops when they go on building searches and home searches that if you can hide something, if you can hide a basketball in a place, there is a way to get a human being into that place. Anything that'll fit a basketball, believe it or not, you'll get a human being. We found a guy on a big screen TV one time. I mean, you know, it's just these things happen. You're going to run into that. But, yeah, really good stuff as far as talking about that. What else would you like to cover? Anything today? You know,
I tell you what, I'll talk about this. This is a medical kit. I think this is a really important area of training and equipment that people don't talk a lot about, is medical kit and how you're going to carry your medical gear. You know, everybody knows that it's a good idea to have a tourniquet. It's a good idea to have some kind of a pressure dressing. And then if you know what you're doing and you had some of the medical training, the chest seals, the hemostatic agent inside a gauze for packing wounds. These are emergency survival tools that, honestly, you're probably more likely to need these because of a car accident you come up on, or somebody has some problem, a trauma they have in your house, something fall accident. These things are at least as valuable to have on you all the time as it is to have a firearm and a knife and a flashlight. So carrying your medical gear is something that people struggle with. I'm wearing a suit today. I'm carrying this medical kit around. I pulled it off because we were running late, getting started at 11 o'clock. And I know yesterday a couple people came up and they saw it hanging out and they immediately think, oh, look, Rob's carrying on the ankle. I don't think ankle carry is a great way to carry a personal defense gun.
No.
So I'm not carrying a gun on my ankle. I'm carrying a gun on my hip. I'm carrying medical gear on my ankle, and this is a really, really easy way to do it. But I like to pull it off every now and then and let people see it and understand it doesn't take up much space. It's very lightweight, but this has the same thing that my range trauma bag has. It's got a good solid tourniquet. It's got a good pressure dressing, compression bandage. It's got two chest seals and the hemostatic agent gauze, and it's in a package that's very easy to carry around. And I would encourage everybody that's serious about their defense and protecting their family and protecting themselves, and serious enough to think about a Viridian light and laser, serious enough to think about a combat-focused shooting class, to take that medical training also and figure out how you're going to have that medical gear around. You know, I've got a 2-year-old, so we got that diaper bag, the backpack. You know, I can keep a tourniquet, I can keep all kinds of stuff in there, but I'm not carrying that bag around today. You know, my wife has a purse, but sometimes she carries that clutch, or she carries, you know, she leaves the purse in the car because she's got the baby to carry around. Sometimes we have the stroller. We can carry around a surgical, you know, mobile medical hospital in the bottom of that stroller.
Oh, absolutely.
But right now, today, we're in a suit. I'm carrying a small gun, and I'm carrying a small medical kit.
Perfect. You know, for any that were wondering why I had the little green gun out, well, it has a camera on it. And also, all these segments are being filmed by Viridian's FACT technology. These two green Glocks right here also have FACT camera technology on them, and all of these segments are being filmed, and they're going to be online, both on our website at ViridianWeaponTech.com and also on YouTube. So be looking for these segments in the near future. Probably in a week or so we'll have them up. Anybody have anything they'd like to ask? Rob? Sabrina?
Hey.
Hi.
So I have a question. In my experience, a lot of women feel uncomfortable going to courses like that because they don't want to be the only woman there, or they feel like they're competing with men. So do you have either special courses for women, or what do you do to make them feel more comfortable about coming through that class?
Usually the best way that I try to make women feel comfortable when they come out to a class. That was the question was, well, what about women who are nervous about coming to a class because they don't want to be the only woman there, or they don't want to, feel like they're somehow in some kind of unfair competition? Well, here's the thing. First of all, you're in your lane, and you may be doing something a little bit different than the person next to you, and a little bit different than the person next to you because of your gun, your skill, but your gender is not one of the reasons you're going to be doing something different, right? The way every guy, some guys carry a gun appendix, some guy carries a gun in the back, some guy wants to carry a gun in a shoulder holster. Women may carry a gun a little bit different as well. So the guns that you carry, talk about gun fit, talk about the gun. People say, what gun do you recommend for women? Doesn't matter. It's not your gender that determines the gun. It's the hand size. It's the length of your fingers. Some women have very long fingers, right? They may have small hands, but they have long fingers, and that changes the type of gun and type of trigger they need. So we just want to make sure that women know when you come to this class, it's a class for humans with guns that are interested in being able to protect themselves and others. Now, I understand that that's the intellectual side. There's the emotional side, which is, well, I still don't want to be the only woman there. Well, bring a friend. That's the only thing I can tell you, because now I'll say probably this year on our tour, I probably already taught 20-something classes. And I would say well more than half of them have had at least one woman, and several of them have had many women. And we don't advertise women's only classes. I'll do that every once in a while for an organization. Well-armed woman will want to do something, or one local instructor will say, we have a women's group, want you to come in, and I'll come in and do that. But generally speaking, because I don't want to encourage this idea that there's a different set of skills or a different way to approach it, I teach human beings, right? I teach human beings based on their need. Jeff's been through my classes. He's left-handed. I can even teach left-handed people, right? So I can certainly handle a woman. It's important for women to understand that there isn't a difference. It was funny. I was with the Yackley family at the Winchester ammunition booth. They're a family that competes together. They have kids. They have man, woman. Obviously, the whole family thing going on, right? 3 kids, and then the husband and wife. And one of the points that she made yesterday with our Q&A over there was this idea that it's a great sport for people to be able to do together. The family can do it together because you can compete with women and men on the same range, with kids on the same range, and it's just you're different size people, you're using different size guns, but human beings all kind of do the same things with handguns. So the type of gun may change, but not the type of training. So we don't do it as a thing. I almost feel it's a little bit condescending, it's a little bit disingenuous, and it's more marketing than anything else when you say women's only class.
Okay. Go ahead. Speak.
So where do you do your classes? What states?
All over the world.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this tour I'm going to be in Pennsylvania, just outside of near Nemacolin, just outside of Pittsburgh. So I'll be in Western Pennsylvania. I think it's New Kensington is the name of the town I'll be in with a guy named Clint Macro. I'll be there in 2 weeks. So I'll be doing 4 days of training, 3 classes in Pennsylvania. I just did in the last 8 days. I've worked in 6 different states. So I was in Kansas. I did 2 classes. I spoke for the Kansas State Rifle Association. I went to New York, then Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts. I just did 2 classes, and I'll be going back to the New England on Monday and teach Tuesday in New Hampshire.
Oh, wow.
And then I'll go down to Pennsylvania, and then Ohio, Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin,
do you
Minnesota.
have a website where we can
throw
look
your
up
website
to
out
see
there.
So
where
what I'm getting is like we teach all over the world, and we have a team of instructors that you can find at combatfocusshooting.com. And ICEtraining.us or Personal Defense Network. And Personal Defense Network's the best place to go because we have a training tab, and if you hit that training tab, you're going to see the whole tour, and we've got 105 classes on the tour this year, from one end of the country to the other.
Okay.
So we teach all over the place.
I've taken a couple courses from that.
Online. Yeah, so we have a great deal of courses online, video, articles at PDN, personaldefensenetwork.com. We certainly have streaming online distance education classes, articles, newsletters you can sign up for that are free. And you'll find a lot of information about Viridian there as well, because we've been working with them for several years. So information on the technical aspects of what they offer and the employment, how you use it. How to use the lasers, how to use the light and lasers as well. So thank you.
Other questions? Yes, sir.
Going back to the subject of women, I find a lot of people where the husband is very comfortable around a firearm, female isn't, trying to put together a plan for personal defense in the house or around the house or even just in your lifestyle. How do you deal with that or bridge that gap?
You know, it's great if we can get everybody in the family who's authorized access to the firearms to come out to the class. But if the women or some of the kids, or maybe it's a roommate, you know, that isn't interested in guns, and you know that their safety and their security is still important to them, but they're not a gun person. Okay, everybody's not going to be a gun person. But what we can do is talk about comprehensive approaches to defense. We can talk about security. We can talk about barricading. We can talk about movement. We can talk about flashlights. We can talk about 911, what to say when you make the emergency call. And we also have a class that we call the 2-person armed defense class. And it's not a team tactics SWAT wannabe course. It's not a fantasy camp. It's not just for husbands and wives. A lot of guys that have friends or coworkers that they all carry guns, they come to that class to learn how to coordinate better, how to multiply their abilities, right? And we take some concepts from the military, and we take some concepts from other team tactics environments, but mostly it's about working together and really avoiding the idea that you might think the other person is the bad guy when things go bump in the night, right? So coordinating, working together, being safe, and that sometimes comes down to only one person having their gun out even when 2 people have guns, and the other one's on the phone, the other one's using the flashlight. Maybe the person who doesn't have a gun in your life can just hold onto your belt and look the other way. So they've got their hand behind them on your belt, and they're watching to see if the police are coming. because you want to make sure the police know, hey, this is the good guy, right? Or they're looking for more threats, or they're at least you know where they are. You're not running around looking for bad guys, and your family member is somewhere hiding around a corner, and you're going to bump into each other, right? So there's some discipline that comes from working with other people, and there's also some I think integrity to saying not everybody is going to be out there with a gun. You're not going to be going into opposite corners clearing a room. Again, you might be working together, even if only one person has a firearm.
Other questions? Yes, sir.
Big fan, Rob. Thank you for everything. I watch all the videos. How do you conceal carry in a suit?
Well, right now I think open carry is legal here too, so I'm carrying a J-frame revolver at 4 o'clock. Normally I carry appendix, but I don't like to carry under my shirt. I don't like the idea of having to untuck my shirt. So even though Crossbreed and many other companies make holsters that are tuckable, and I could wear a gun appendix here, I'm not. I'd rather go here, which I carried here for years. People go, why are you carrying a J-frame today, not your normal XDS or something like that? I flew out of Logan Airport, so I secured all my guns with Cape Gun Works up there at the training facility that I was teaching at last week. Flying in and out of Logan with a gun is kind of almost half impossible. So all my guns are secured up there for the tour, all my tour demo guns, and this gun was loaned to me by a friend here. So thank you.
Anybody else got any questions?
Oh yeah. Gonna die would have been awesome. That would have been the first death recorded on a fax.
That would have been the best way to end this segment, but I think we'll just end this segment right now. And Rob, you'll be back tomorrow again, and thanks so much for coming by again. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, John.
All right.